My name's Mr Dalton. I'm Deputy Principal at Loki Boys High School and PE teacher at Loki Boys High School. It's my privilege to be here today to talk about the flipped classroom and my experiences with that flipped classroom. Okay, so this is sort of what we're going to go over today. I'm going to start with what is the flipped classroom and why might you look to maybe flip your teaching. I'm going to provide an overview of RBHS PE with Mr Dalton. That's sort of what I call my classroom. I'm going to discuss the notion of content creation versus content curation. I've spent quite a lot of time talking about the repurposing the lesson time. This is, to me, one of the most important things, or the most important thing about running a flipped classroom. I'm going to discuss some of the effects that I've noticed in my flipped classroom around student creativity. I'm going to look at some of the evidence that supports flipping the teaching, and then there'll be opportunity at the end for questions. Now, what I'd sort of envisaged was a smaller group, and I thought, well, if you want to ask a question along the way, feel free to do so. Now we've got such a big group, I'm wondering about time pressures. If we can maybe hold questions at the end, unless there's a really burning one, if you really want to ask a question along the way, I'm okay with that. Okay. Rightio. So I thought to start with this. All of our classrooms will look different. We come from different cities. We have different contexts, and that's a term I'm going to come back to a lot today. The term of context. Just for a start, is my voice right at the back? Yep. But I think one thing we can agree on is none of us want our classrooms to look like this. And at this point, I just want to emphasise, I'm not here today to preach to you about the flipped classroom being the best style of teaching. That's not what I'm about. I'm just here to talk about my experiences, what I've found successful with the flipped classroom with my boys at our school and our context. Okay, so please don't take anything I say as coming across as preaching, because it's not what I'm about. So let's just start with what is the flipped classroom. And again, I'll take this to a foundational level because I can't assume that everybody knows what flipped classrooms are. So if you're well versed in what the flipped classroom is, please bear with me, but I won't do this for too long anyway. So in a nutshell, your flipped classroom is when your homework becomes classwork and your classwork becomes homework. It's a really simple way of putting it, but in essence, it's about changing the dynamics of the way the learners learn in the classroom. Okay, so on this little picture here, there's lots of pictures like this on the internet. On the left there, you've got the traditional classroom, and it says there, teacher's role, sage on the stage, lecture today, and then homework. In the flipped classroom, the opposite is true, where the teacher becomes the guide on the side. So for the purpose of this definition, if we think about a traditional classroom, it is like what I'm doing now. Teacher-centered, I'm in control of how the content is delivered. Okay? Now that can look different. There can be teacher-centered component, there can be discursive component, student-led component, but ultimately there will always be a component of the teacher distributing the content to the students. Now in the flipped classroom, you have the content delivered to the students at home, which allows you to have all that time available in the classroom to work on digging down, unpacking, and into that learning. So the flipped classroom's been around for about 7 years or more, depending on where you trace the origins back to. But we're moving towards a space where the internet at home for all students is becoming far more ubiquitous than it has been in the past. And it's allowing us to do things in the classroom that 5, 10 years ago were inconceivable. And the flipped classroom is just one of those things. Okay, so what led me to flipping? Now, I've just got a couple of little philosophies here. One's an academic, one's an educationalist, and one is a martial artist. I've included Bruce Lee here because I think he had some wonderful notions about education and teaching and learning. But for me, 3 years ago, I was sort of doing some reflection around how I could increase student engagement and how I could increase student ownership of the learning in my classroom. Okay, at Loki Boys High School, we're a very proud school, very good school, but we are a lower decile school, and for boys that I was teaching in my classroom, engagement and ownership of the learning was a challenge, and it's something I was looking to address. And a lot of the reading I started doing sort of aligned with these philosophies here. And I came across the flipped classroom, came across it on Twitter, and I sort of did a research around it, and I thought, heck, that looks really, really cool. I'm going to jump in and have a go with this. But I didn't really consider all of the parameters that you need to consider when you're operating in a flipped classroom. So my first attempt wasn't very successful, and I'll talk about that a little bit later on, but just bear that in mind. It's really important, I suppose, at this point that if you're considering flipping your classroom, that you think about the things we're going to discuss today. Rightio. This is an image I came across from Richard Wells. I went up to Ottawa College last year. I was doing a bit of work with him. You might be familiar with Richard. He has a Twitter handle, iPad Wells, and he's got the blog iPadforschools.org. And hey, this is bold, and this is controversial, but for me, I looked at that and it resonated with me. Take what you want out of that, but for me, it resonated with me, and when I reflected on what my classroom looked like prior to flipping. So, in this image here, I know you probably can't read at the back, but you've got this group of red students. Red student there says actively disengaged. Life gives many reasons to do this. Orange group, passively disengaged. Looking at you and even requesting lectures so to have unchallenged chill time. The yellow group, trying to listen / keep up. Only understand a percentage of what they've heard. The blue group, listening but scared to ask for clarification. The green group, confident, calm and keeping up with the teacher. And the student there, coloured black, already knows. So Richard sort of argues, he's a very strong proponent of flipped classrooms as well. He argues that talking or lecturing to a class like I am now is this effective. As I say, take what you like out of that. Think about what that image sort of means to you. But for me, as I say, it sort of resonated with me as another reason maybe to look at flipped learning. Okay, so let's look at some of the whys. And if I relate this back to Bloom's taxonomy here, previously, before I started flipping my lessons were constructed relatively similarly. Okay, at least in the content sections of the unit. So I would teach new content, and that may be traditionally teacher-centered or discursively, depending on what we were doing. And we work towards some kind of guided, independent, or cooperative type task in the lesson. And then I would ask the students to go home for homework and extend their learning. Now, if we bear that picture in mind, that works really well for this group of students. But for this group of students, and this group of students, and this group of students, no matter how big that group looks like in your classroom, that's a tough ask. Okay, so for the more able students, the ones that can keep up, they can go home and extend their learning. For those students that don't fall in that category, however many there are, they fall further behind. Because at home, when they're working by themselves, they've got no one to collaborate with, to share and help with. So one or two things happens. They get frustrated and they don't do it, or they just don't try. Okay? So before I was flipping, this is me, before I was flipping, I was working a lot in this area here in the classroom. And then we'd sort of get into the higher ends of Bloom's taxonomy, maybe for a portion of the lesson, and I'd expect them to be able to work here at home. Now, with a flipped classroom, what you end up doing is having this lower end of Bloom's taxonomy at home, and then in class, you're working up here, where they've got peers to work together, to collaborate, and to share, and to help each other. Now, I guess that's a bit of a segue into the next point I'm going to make. When you flip the classroom, now you've created a whole lot of time. Time's the one thing as teachers we want more of, but you've created all this time, you need to be able to use it and use it effectively. I'm just going to relate this to the TPAC model. So the TPAC model is based on the work of Mishra and Kohler. It relates to learning with digital technologies in the classroom. You've probably all heard of SAMR. Most of you might have heard of the SAMR model. TPAC model is another model. Okay, and this assumes that every teacher brings together their content knowledge, their pedagogical knowledge, and the technical knowledge, and ideally aiming for the centre intersection there for a masterful 21st century classroom. Okay? Now, we all have physical education degrees or variants of, so our content knowledge is assumed. Okay, we all have good content knowledge. We're all good to outstanding practitioners in our own right, so our pedagogical circle is well taken care of there as well. But as we move to an environment where one-to-one learning, digital learning is more prominent, this is an area that challenges a lot of teachers, and that's okay. Now, within the flipped classroom, we have to be very, very careful when we implement it that we don't reside here, in this TCK area. Okay, great content, whatever it is you're using to give to your students, great technical skills in implementing it, but not a lot of thought to the pedagogy behind it. I can't emphasise this enough. If you're going to look to flip your classroom, you have to think about the pedagogy, repurposing that lesson time. It is so important. Okay, so like I said before, we're aiming for that part there, that TPCK area. Now, I'll just park that for a minute, we'll come back to that, I'm sure. I'm going to talk about the notion of content creation versus content curation. Now, in a flipped classroom, you need to have content that students work on at home. When I talk about the flipped classroom to various people, the biggest barrier that I come across from when people talk about barriers for it is the time it takes to create content. And that is a very real and very fair barrier. It does take time. But you don't have to create. You can curate. Okay? So the medium I've chosen to use is YouTube, and I'll just park it for a second and tell you how I got there. So if we rewind the story to when I was in 2013, I thought, I'm going to try this flipped classroom thing. This is going to be whiz bang, I'm going to be awesome. And I spoke to my level 2 class about it. I said, what do you reckon? We talked about the underlying philosophy behind a flipped classroom, the proposed benefits of a flipped classroom, and they said, sounds great, let's do it. At the time we were doing 2.3 mocks and pots. So I went away and I found a whole lot of readings that pertain to that knowledge, that content. And I issued the readings to the boys. I had a class of about 25 back then. And I'm not going to ask you to guess, but the next day after I issued the readings, you probably got an idea in your head, I had this many boys do the readings. Okay? So had a little bit of a State of the Nation address. What's going on? We said we wanted to do this. Why didn't you do the reading? And I had all the excuses under the sun. But the boy said, no, sorry sir, that's on us. We'll do it. We're invested in this as well. So the next time it came to doing a reading, which happened to be, I think it was the next night, the next day the class came back and 3 boys had done the reading, which made me reflect now on that image of the colours. Okay. So when I unpacked that with the boys, what came out of it was, we don't want to read. It just doesn't interest us. And again, context is important. What doesn't work for my boys in my school may work for your boys and girls in your schools. But for my boys, it wasn't going to cut it. So what I then did was went away and reflect on how else I could do this, because I was invested in the idea of flipped learning, and I knew from talking to the boys about it that they were interested in it. So for the rest of that year, I sort of tinkered away with content creation through digital media, because I knew YouTube was something that obviously kids, us, we all use it. And I found that through, at the time I was using iMovie, I could create some reasonable content. So what I did over the summer of 2013 was I created content for 1 unit. I came back at the start of the year and I sort of pitched it to the boys, at my year 13 class. What do you think? Do you want to try this flipped classroom? Because again, for me, in my opinion, you need their buy-in. If they're not interested in it, why bother? And they were interested in trying it, because this is a big shift for the students as well as the teachers, because for the most part, they've probably been learning inside quote unquote traditional classrooms, and then you put them in a flipped environment. So it's not just changing the way you do things, it's changing the way they learn as well. Okay. So we tried it for a unit, and it worked really well. And I say it worked really well because, one, the results were better than they've been in the past, and the student voice data told me that they enjoyed it. And I'll share that with you later on. So as a group, we decided that yes, we were going to continue with this. So in 2014, I made quite a lot of content, and I put it up on YouTube. And I did this on purpose because, for me, my philosophy is I like to share. You know, if it's going to benefit, you know, other teachers, other students, then cool. And it's just sort of the way, I guess, I like to work. Okay, so this is my YouTube channel, and this was 4 weeks ago. I was presenting a similar presentation to a Mandarin language assistance conference. This is 4 weeks later, or yesterday. It's an extra 12 subscribers and an extra 2,500 views on the page and the videos. So what I've noticed, I suppose, especially in the last 6 months, is there's been quite significant growth behind the channel. And I know it's not my boys that are watching the video 15,000 times. It just doesn't happen. In fact, I know not many of them subscribe to the channel because they access my videos, notifications through the learning management supports that we use in the classroom, which are Facebook and Google Classroom. So I've been contacted by teachers as far north as Auckland and as far south as Invercargill, sort of asking about how the flipped classroom works and you know, how do you make videos and so on and so forth. So, and I really like that. Again, you know, I think the more that we can share and we can collaborate across our schools as well as within our schools, the better it is for us as our profession, our learning area, and our students. Okay, so what I thought I'd just do now is just give you a snapshot of how this works. So this is an amalgamation of several videos put together. It doesn't go for too long. Just if you haven't seen, which I'm sure most of you haven't seen, the channel, you can get an idea of how this works.
Okay, what we're going to do now is have a look at LeBron James taking on Rory McIlroy in the golf swing. What I want you to do is compare how LeBron James fails to generate much force, and it comes down to a lot of factors, but predominantly his lack of recruitment of muscles and sequential timing of the movement, which results in a pretty ugly swing, which I'm sure you'll agree. Compare that to Rory McIlroy, how much of his body he recruits, how much force he generates into producing such a smooth and powerful golf swing.
Something new. That's what it's about.
Ready?
Yep.
It didn't look good, man. When I hear you talk about you trying new things, it's refreshing. Now, I'm gonna be honest with you. When I play this back, you're not gonna like it. What do you think that you're not good at? Technically, that was really bad. You're not bending your knees at all.
Yeah.
You locked up like a 2x4. Relax. Do I play basketball? No. But if you wanted to invite me, don't bend your knees, but let them loose a little bit. Wiggle, but not really too much. Back straight, but not really.
Hey, you got somewhere else to go?
No, I'm here all day. I would do it because that's me trying new things.
Hello? What up, homie? I'm trying to relax. Kid won't leave me alone.
Hello? Come on. And splash. Hey,
Why you laughing?
this ain't just sport, man. This is golf. But it's fine. We're trying something new. Yeah, let me get that. Try it again.
Look at that setup. Look at how braced that right leg is. Look at the right knee and right thigh and the extension here. And watch the coil on that shirt right now and how far back that comes. Look at that right knee and right thigh. Still absorbing all that power that's built in now. And then look at the sort of squat turn, and that turns the hip out. Delay the hand action. Whack right there at the bottom. Extend.
Movement pattern is repeated in the same environment. These are sometimes also known as drills. and it involves repeatedly practicing the skill in order to strengthen the motor program. This type of practice is best with discrete and closed skills, however can still be applied with open skills as can be seen here in the video. Mass practice is when you practice a skill continuously without any breaks or rest. Schema theory says that we create generalized motor programs for a skill. We do this through exploring the movement. Specifically, we learn the ways in which variations of the same skill are related. Even considering just one action, like a forehand or backhand drive in tennis, the ball is always unique in its height over the net, how fast it is approaching, how much spin it has, the direction of that spin, the height of the bounce, and so on. And let's not forget that these conditions change again, depending on the surface that the players are playing on. The performer will also vary their intentions of how to hit the ball back, faster or harder, or to place the shot left or right, short or long. Even when two shots look identical, they will be slightly different. As we have discussed, this stored information in the generalized motor program is changeable to respond to the situation. The larger the motor program that is achieved through practice, the easier it can be adapted to new situations. Even the best golfers in the world get themselves in tough positions. Their superior schema allow them to apply their generalized motor programs in a variety of situations like these.
Give it a go, that he has a chance to play it, yes. It will pop up out of there if you hit it right. I'd say the odds are, 1 in 5, though, that he hits it inside of 15 feet.
The situation you are in. Here, Bubba is looking at the ball, looking at where the hole is, looking if there are any obstructions in the way. The response specification interprets this information and feeds it forward into the generalized motor program for an enter the notion of capillarization. The density of the capillary beds in the muscles and surrounding the heart and lungs increases as more branches develop. This allows more efficient gaseous exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide. Another way to look at this is like a city with a population boom. If thousands of people move to a particular city, there is a lot more cars on the roads and demand for housing. The council will need to build new subdivisions and roads to these subdivisions. The roads are the capillaries that allow the cars to drive to their new homes. Cannot change or control this aggressive impulse. It suggests that humans have a fighting instinct which in earlier times ensured protection of food supplies and ensured survival. The
Okay, so my philosophy of creating videos now, and it's evolved, and I'll talk about the evolution of the content soon, but I sort of relate to this method of Loki. It's one of the theories behind memory and how we create a better storage of events in our mind. So this method or this theory uses visualization to organize and recall information. And I know that's a bit of a grab because in theory with the method of Loki, it's about location method, creating a visual picture in your mind and organizing that picture so that you can remember those ideas. But what I've noticed when I unpack the videos with my class before we get into the learning for the day is it's the obscure that catches them the most. It's the Sergio Garcia in the tree. It's watching LeBron James trying to swing a golf club that presents the best teachable moments. And it's those things that the boys remember when we're talking about and unpacking that theory. So they create those images and link the theory to it. Rightio, so putting this all together. So you've seen the videos. Now, there's not a video for every night. It's just not possible. But when we're covering a bit of content, there's a video. the next day there's always, the process follows the same, and we start with this flipped mat, okay? I give the flipped mat to my class at the start of the year, and I sort of say to them, take notes on those videos the way you like, but if you're struggling with how to organise your thinking, this is a really good way of doing it. But I also warn them that every day we start the lesson with this, okay? And I'm particularly interested in the top 4 boxes when we work together. So at the start of every lesson, what happens, I get my whiteboard pens out and I throw them out to the class. And I sort of say to them, right, you need to give me a question, and I nominate one person to write the text of definition on the board, one person to write the thing they found most interesting, and then the boys can sort of just fill the other 2 boxes in. Now, this is the most important thing for me, okay, the question, because the questions sort of shape where we go with the lesson. And I use this term loosely, but lessons are relatively organic, because for me, it's about creating student-led learning, student ownership of their learning. I want them to direct where we go with that content that they've sort of revised last night. And depending on the questions they ask, that shapes how the lesson is organised. Okay? The text of definition, the idea is there, I just want them to be concise in their thinking. What is the definition? If you had to explain that to a 10-year-old, if you had to explain it to someone in a very short, concise way, how would you do that? And someone has a crack at that, and then we sort of redefine it as a class until we get to a definition that we're comfortable with. This area here, one thing I found most interesting, like I said, that often leads to the most unique teachable moments, because it's those things that the boys ask about that can link to previous learning or create a link to future learning. You know, things like LeBron James. I just assumed he'd be a good golfer because he's the world's best basketball player. Like the notion of transfer, you know, it's just really cool opportunities. Okay. So like I said, this takes maybe 5-10 minutes max. I've essentially created 50 minutes in a lesson where I don't need to teach anymore, okay? In the old days, if I was teaching about stages of learning or schema theory, it might take me a lesson or 2 of PowerPoints and question in the time. You'd be amazed how much time you save with creating content and flipping your lessons. It's actually quite scary. A lesson, you know, I would have taken easily a lesson on schema theory, then probably had to follow it up with another couple of lessons to ensure the boys understood it. I can put that into a 7-minute video. Okay. So, back to this notion again. You've created time, you need to use it effectively. You can't sit there and continue to teach. It's got to be students going, unpacking, exploring the learning they've, you know, making connections with the content that you've delivered via your video or your readings or whatever it is that you're doing. And for me, it's activities such as these. This is just sort of a snapshot of my class this year, of a couple of things there that allow for real-world learning. You know, and to me, it ties to the mantra of physical education, learning in, through, and about movement. And if I reflect back to when I was teaching a non-flipped manner, as much as I tried to bring learning in and through movement into my lessons, it was too much about movement. A proportion of my time was dedicated to too much towards about movement. Now, the about movement happens before they come to class. Allows them to learn in and through. Okay, I've just got a couple of extra little examples here. This is, you know, they're not all practical. I mean, in the through script, there still has to be about, there still has to be collaboration, challenging each other's thinking. And our school is a Google platform school, and it's you know, an amazing platform to allow collaborative thinking and you know, and challenging each other's assumptions and stereotypes. This was an activity with my class last year when we were doing 3.5. We looked at sports violence, so it linked into the scholarship question. And the video was about the theories of violence, and you caught a snapshot of that one there with Maununu and Piriwipu. And I just had the boys come in and look at what are the assumptions, stereotypes, with instinct theory, frustration aggression theory, so on and so forth. What assumptions, stereotypes need to be challenged. And I didn't know how this was going to go because it's completely new learning for them. And there was some traditional boys being boys in there, but there was some really, really good thinking that happened. And again, if I reflect, if I just taught them about the theories of violence, then asked them to go and unpack those assumptions and stereotypes at home, it just wouldn't have happened. This is an example from about 7 weeks ago, actually. And I'm particularly proud of this, of this group in particular. I don't know what you guys find, but for me, when we're doing 3.3 and the biophysical aspects that affect how we learn skills, schema theory for my boys has always been something they've struggled to grasp with. This is the product of the video, the lesson shaper, and this activity. I asked the class, I split them into groups of 3, and I asked them to come up with a visual representation of how schema works. And I asked them to interrelate it to the stages of learning. We've just done that previously. And I wasn't sure how it was going to go, but for me it was, let's see where they're at with grasping the concept of schema theory. Where do we need to go next? And not every group was this good. I'm not going to lie to you, it's not a perfect world, but this group was definitely the best. And and it's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but for one lesson and 1 7-minute video, I was pretty impressed.
What we have here is a visual representation of schema theory. We have here Young in the chin. Young is a free-range chicken who loves to play touch in his spare time. We are his owners, and as you can see, we have 3 baskets that we store all the eggs that he lays. Each basket represents a specific motor program. So when Lito experiences new conditions or changes in an environment, we're trying to perform a skill, he lays an egg. For example, he was outside playing with the footy when it began to rain. Leighton has a wonderful long ball. However, in rainy conditions, he found that his pass was bad in comparison to his long ball in a dry setting. As he practiced and responded to his knowledge of performance and then his knowledge of results, he found a technique that when used successfully produced a beautiful long ball similar to that of his pass in dry conditions. Because Lito is a free-range chicken, the eggs he lays are different size, small, medium, or large. As you can see at the top. This is what we call cognitive association autonomy. Now, when there is a single basket or motor program with multiple sized eggs, Lito develops his skills and his eggs will become larger and of better quality. What we then have is a single basket or motor program with multiple sized eggs or variation in success for techniques and actions. For example, the passing basket can contain an autonomous right-hand pass and a cognitive left-hand pass. And this
So that goes on for quite a while, but and as I said, it's not perfect, but for one lesson, after 1 7-minute video, for them to be able to create a visual representation, interrelate to another concept, and create connections within that theory, I was pretty impressed. Okay, now I talked about the evolution of my content. When I started, I was not comfortable with the sound of my own voice, and I found it very difficult to put videos together, and it's just that natural thing you have, and I hid behind just words, I guess, and then I amalgamated things like LeBron James, whatever it was, and then put slides up. And as it's evolved, I mean, if I look back to my first videos up to now, it's changed significantly. And it continues to evolve in different areas that we learn about, lend differently to being able to create content in different ways as well. But one thing that's happened this year has been my boys in my class have taken the challenge to create content. And I say taking the challenge, they wanted to do it. What happened was, how this started was, again, another task. I split the boys into 3 groups. And I said, you need to film how feedback should be given to a cognitive learner, how feedback should be given to an associative learner, how feedback should be given to an autonomous learner. And I asked them also to interrelate the concept of schema theory in there as well. And what they came up with was really quite special, especially one group. We then reviewed that, and then I said, okay, now you've seen it, what would you do differently if you could do that again? So they planned around that and they went and refilmed. And it came together really, really well. And I said to them, are you comfortable with me putting that together and making a video and chucking it up on the channel? And boys being boys, they're like, yep. And then from there, about a week later, one of the boys in the class said, sir, can we do that again? And we were sort of moving into socio-cultural factors that affect participation, and barriers and enablers, and effect on well-being, 2 areas that I didn't have any content for. And I said, split them into 2 groups. You become the experts in that content area. It builds on the learning they've done from level 1 and level 2 anyway, and you're going to teach through your video to the other half of the class about this, and you're going to need to answer questions and the like. And again, they just did such a wonderful job. So this here is a snapshot of those 3 videos sort of amalgamated together. Just snapshot.
G'day mate, this is another RBHS PE with Mr Dalton. Today I will be talking about how feedback should be given to a cognitive learner. Feedback is important towards the development of his rugby parts. The cognitive phase. The performer has a developing generalized motor program. They cannot use intrinsic feedback yet. Therefore, they are heavily reliant on extrinsic feedback. Specifically, this feedback should be encouraging, specific, and immediate.
You're in a perfect position, so just keep up what you're doing, mate. Just keep on drop kicking like this, even if it's a bit feels a bit funny. Just keep going through the motion, because what you got here biomechanically, it's perfect.
Session, DC, stay on slot.
Te whare tapawha is a concept template that allows one to identify domestic pressures that inhibit or enhance performance. It is said that if all components in your whare tapawha, all dimensions in your house, are well balanced, the better your chances of performing in whatever sport code you may choose to have.
Good of the night. This is RBHS PE with jump.
Jordan, have you done your chores yet?
Oh, I have not done my chores.
Why not?
I'm training and I need to work on my 3-foot shot.
No training for you. Stay here, we'll do the chores now.
Jordan,
Where have you been?
I'm leaving the chores.
Sorry, Christian, sorry. Sorry, bro, but we've got an important game this weekend. I'm sorry to say you're out. Gonna have to stand down for this weekend. Sorry, bro. You're gonna have to stand down for this weekend. Go, boys. Play a team.
G'day mate, this is another RBHS PE with the lads. Today we'll be talking to you about barriers and enablers. Barriers. Barriers is something that can prevent someone from moving forward.
Enablers. Something that enables someone to move forward, to keep them going throughout the training program. And that's what we're doing for this task.
You will see more of this in the other zone.
Let's get to that, Jim. So I'll see you membership, mate.
Oh mate, I don't have one.
You already completed this one, when you come back another time.
Oh mate, I need to work out.
Oh, sorry, how we count that membership card.
Come back tomorrow.
This is a barrier for the client due to financial issues. Can't pay for the membership, but there are other methods of training that the client could pursue.
This sucks, man. Let's just go home, play PlayStation, pick up some KFC.
Come on, mate. I know this is the best kind of idea for an exercise. But come on, mate. I know running's not the thing, swimming, biking. I'm trying to look out for your health here, right? The diabetes is
the exercise for you.
You can do it, mate.
Hey mate, who's that? It's your conscience. Alright. What are you doing?
I just wanted to shoot some hoops.
So you set yourself some goals?
Goals? What are goals?
Goals, you know, when you seek to accomplish something.
Nah, I don't have any.
Well, maybe you should set some you might achieve more in your training.
What kind of goals?
Well, I don't know, maybe make 10 3-pointers in a row. How else are you going to be like Steph Curry?
I don't know. Should we try it out?
Yeah, why not?
And of those 3 videos, you're on the YouTube channel if you want to check out the whole video. They did everything. The only thing I did was put it together, and put it through iMovie. They thought about the content, they thought about how to represent it, they went away, filmed it, reflected on it, made changes to it before they gave it to me to put together. And as you see, they had a lot of fun doing it, and it was just really cool. Okay, that leads me on to this idea of increased student creativity. So you've seen this increased student creativity in the classroom. What you're seeing is the boys having fun with their learning. We had a saying in our school we us level 3 PE teachers weren't proud of. At our school, boys wear reds and whites when they're doing PE for year 9 to year 13 in theory. But the saying was, year 13 PE, sell your red and whites. And it sort of goes back to that idea that, hey, we wanted to do more in and through movement rather than about movement. So learning looks more fun now than it did in my classroom, I know that, than 3-4 years ago. Now what has also happened, and I didn't anticipate this, but what I have seen is this increasing level of student creativity with their assessments as well. 3 years ago and everything before that, with the exception of the odd outlier, the boys would always submit a report for an assignment. Okay, 100% almost were reports. And that wasn't mandated. Every assessment we've gone out of our way to say you can choose your assessment mode, whether it be report, whether it be seminar, so on and so forth. But, and again, I suppose, technology advancing is making this easier as well, but this is this year. Okay, so this year, in my class, I had a variety of presentations, whether it be Prezi or Google Slides, 5 movies, okay, 3 reports, there were 2 presentations, there was 1 Voicethread submission, and 1 seminar, okay, and that's just never happened before. And I'll just give you a quick snapshot of this.
Kia ora, and welcome to Level 3 PE with Dalton Wilson. This episode explanations and statements of 2 strategies that I use in the 3.9 physical education assessment and how I use them to create efficient training schemes that would be able to guarantee success in the W2K trade room. The components of fitness. Basic fitness can be classified in 4 main components: strength, speed, stamina, and flexibility. However, exercise scientists have identified 9 components that comprise the definition of fitness.
Okay, so I'll just mute that there. Now, this is something, Hamish down the back there is the other level 3 teacher with me, and we both were really promoting, I suppose, alternative assessment modes to our class, because again, it's changing a habit for them. The habit has always been, I do a report, I do a report, I do a report. And we spend quite a bit of time, to be fair, on teaching them some skills that would help them with creating movies, showing them how a Voicethread works, downloading like this app here, Voice Recorder Pro for iOS, download it, link straight to your Google Drive, fantastic. For Android, Smart Voice Recorder does the same thing. They're an amazing apps again, didn't exist several years ago, but they allow us now a new way to have students work towards assessments. So what I did, that other hat I have in the school, I organised an assessment professional learning morning for our staff, and I asked Hamish to come and speak, and I asked our building teacher to come and speak about some of the things that were happening inside of Level 3 PE and inside Level 3 building timber trades. So Hamish's class was the same. They had a variety of different assessment modes, and the building class were all working through blogs. So the first myth I had to get rid of in our staff, which was somewhat prevalent, was an assessment doesn't have to be submitted the same mode for every student. Okay, so students can find the way that works best for them. At the end of the day, evidence, as long as it's authentic, is evidence. And what I did was I had those teachers speak about the process they went through. Then I asked 2 students from each of the 2 classes to speak to the staff. And what they said was so powerful. One of our boys articulated it very well, and that he said, for him, writing reports is something he's always had to do, but he's never enjoyed doing, and he found difficult to articulate his thoughts. But talking into his phone, that was really easy. And overlaying that with slides, it's essentially all this is. PowerPoint slides overlaid with a Voicethread through Windows Movie Maker, that was really easy for him to do, and it was fun. Plus, it's a transferable skill that allowed him in English to get an excellence in the visual essay. So having them articulate that to our staff, and the prevalent words they use amongst the 4 of them were, it's more engaging, it's more fun, but most importantly, I like to be able to work in the way that works best for me. Okay? So what we're doing now, and I'm really keen to talk to you, Leslie, at some point after this, what I'm seeing is this increased level of student creativity, whether it be here or in the class, but there's still a disconnect between what the boys are submitting and what I know they understand. And I need to do some work around how to get that working together better, because you've seen that movie snapshot of the boys, those visual representations, they understand the content really well, and I need to be able to give them credit for that, I suppose. So one of the things that we're doing currently, right now, is with 3.3, are golf blogs. So, I'm sure you're all familiar with 3.3, that evaluation of a performance improvement program, how you relate biophysical and sociocultural factors, and the importance of the effect on how much you improve. What I've sort of said to, Hamish and I said to our boys is, if you maintain that evidence of your participation organically through time, through a blog, or another means that works for you, then we can mark that blog. Okay, I can mark that, that's evidence. And at the end I can mark it and say, right, you might just be short in this area here. It doesn't have to go away and create a whole nother evaluation, because they're evaluating as they go. They're talking about the sociocultural and the biophysical aspects that have helped them in that session, and evaluating some of them in very short, they can do it in a very short space of words for one session. I use feedback. I had feedback given to me today from Mr Dalton. I had feedback given to me from my partner, and this allowed me to make this change, which is positive in my swing, because it's evaluation. Okay, evidence. Whenever I discuss the flipped classroom with people, they always say, what evidence is there to support flipped classrooms? Now, I always like to say this is still relatively new. We're talking sort of 7 years, 8 years of flipped classrooms being in operation. And to that end, I don't think it's fair at this point to look at the literature to say, these are the benefits, these are the research papers that support flipped learning, these are the research papers that go against the theory of flipped learning. Because until we get to the point where there is more uptake, more sharing of best practice, more professional development around the area, I don't think it's a fair comparison. But there is evidence supporting it, and there is evidence refuting it. I'll be clear on that point. I was at a conference just very recently, and it was around digital technologies and the Schema model. And we had a workshop like this, and then there was a debrief afterwards. And one gentleman at the debrief sort of said that he really was negative on the flipped classroom movement because he saw it as a teacher-centered pedagogy. And I couldn't bite my tongue. I sort of said, well, that's your opinion, you're entitled to your opinion, but in my opinion, I think you built that opinion up by watching someone that's probably not doing it very well. Because the whole idea, and I'm trying to emphasize that point, if you repurpose that lesson time, it should lead to student-led learning. You become the guide on the side, not the teacher-centered movement like we have got here, like I'm doing right now. So when you flip your classroom, you have to think about your role within that classroom, your way that you now become a facilitator of knowledge as opposed to a transmitter of knowledge. Okay, what I can share with you is some of my evidence. Right. So this is student voice data from last year, and this was the first measure of student voice I took in the year. I'm sharing this one with you on purpose. At our school, after every unit we teach, an expectation is that every teacher takes a measure of student voice. Okay, we need to reflect on the way we're doing things, and we need to know what the students think about the way we're doing things. And as I say, this was the first unit we did last year, and this was sort of the evidence that I took out of that around the flipped learning. I asked questions specifically around the flipped learning. And I expected it to be worse. I expected it to be worse because this was new to them. Like I said earlier, I flipped on their heads the way they're learning and the way they've been used to learning for a long period of time. Throughout the year, this evidence became even more positive as they got used to the idea of how flipped classrooms work. But as I say, I share this one with you because this was the most negative, for want of a better word, in the year. Okay, so again, the evidence based on student feedback was there to support flipped learning last year. Okay, it's going funny. Okay, so this was after the first unit this year. The new assessment 3.9, you saw the snapshot of the assessments. And again, new to them, first time they've ever experienced flipped classroom. So again, I was pretty happy to see that kind of evidence from them that they support and they enjoy that style of learning. I asked a couple of different questions there. So this one here, if given the choice, I prefer to learn in a flipped classroom environment with Mr Dalton than have him teach traditionally. And again, you can see overwhelmingly so that they support that thinking. And again here, it's not universal, but if I extrapolate last year's trend, I'd expect that to move this way. But what I always say to my classes, if this isn't working for you, I'll flip back. Well, I won't flip back, I'll go back to a different style of teaching. So it's about what they want, okay? Questions?
What happens for those who don't look at it the night before?
Good question, I get that one every time. Okay, so two things. I'm sure I'm going to ask the other question. What happens for the students that don't have the internet at home? So if I can answer that one first. This year, so again, when I go into the class at the start of the year, the first question I ask, I do a Google form survey, and one of the questions I ask in that is, do you have the internet at home? So I'm sort of gathering my evidence, can I even approach this with the class? So this year I've got 100% of boys with internet at home. Last year I had 2 boys that didn't have internet at home. And I was able to work around that by providing them with Wi-Fi access at school, because we hadn't at that point, in fact we haven't moved to that point yet, that universal Wi-Fi access for all students. Next year we will. Now for those boys that don't watch the video at home, I've tried different things. I tried the whole, okay, boys, you need to watch the video at home. I know you've got training, I know you've got work, but look, it's really important. It's only a 7-minute video, blah, 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 blah. We'll play it in class. But all I was doing there was reinforcing the fact that if you don't watch it at home, I'll play it in class. So what I've had to do is, if you don't watch the video at home, then we press on. They can still connect dots because we're working in collaborative groups, and I always make sure I check who watched, who didn't watch. And when I split groups up, I make sure that they're split up amongst the groups. And I think you saw that feedback there, that like working in groups, work with people that know the stuff really well versus us that don't know very well. But it's something you've got to keep on top of. Again, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that the flipped classroom is perfect or my flipped classroom is perfect, because it's not. There are challenges on a daily basis, and that is one of the biggest challenges. But my philosophy with my videos is 7 minutes or less. Okay, my argument is 7-minute video, if watched twice and taking notes, is 20 minutes worth of homework. So I'd argue any student can find the time to do that.
How do you get around issues of copyright with your video making?
So I took advice at the start around issues of copyright, and there's 2 things to that. Firstly, you can ask for permission of content, and secondly, for educational purposes, it gives you quite a lot of freedom. And as long as you're not for profit, which I'm not for profit, and I make that explicit on any video that I've borrowed content, for educational purposes, and not for profit, I'm okay. I have had issues with 2 videos. Last year we were doing risk in the outdoors, and I did some stuff around absolute risk and real risk, and I borrowed some stuff from National Geographic. I asked for permission, and they matched. So on YouTube, goes in your channel, the video warning saying matched content, and then from that point you can keep it up or you can take it down. So I just, if it's matched content and I don't get permission, I take it down. I've worked out that MBA.com, anything I borrow of theirs they don't like, so I don't use that anymore. But again, evolution of my content, I guess I've wrestled with that idea of digital citizenship, and am I displaying good digital citizenship? So I've sort of tried to evolve past that idea. But at the end of the day, it's those things that the kids like the most. The Sergio Garcia in the tree, the LeBron James doing the golf swing. So where I can ask for permission, but it is a grey area, I suppose. Yeah.
How do you know if you have to ask for permission?
Certain things, like the National Geographic, it came from National Geographic page, and it was clearly identified that it was their intellectual property. Now, if it's, I've had conflicting advice on this, but if it's an ad, so that LeBron James, it's Samsung ad, you take out anything to do with Samsung with it, you're okay, because it's free, whatever the term is, it's
Public domain.
Public domain, yeah. So I stay away from anything now that if it's clearly identified, NBA.com or Golf Channel, whatever it is. So I just would try and stick with free domain stuff.
How do you edit your video? What do you use?
So I use 2 things. I use iMovie and Camtasia, depending on what I'm doing.
What's that other one?
Camtasia. Camtasia is screen recording software. iMovie is movie making software.
Let's spell Camtasia.
CAMTASIA. And it's not too expensive. It was $100 for Camtasia Mac. For PC, it's more expensive, but great software, really easy to use. There are free ones out there, but in my experience, they're harder to use.
Hamish, over here someone? Just a question for Hamish. How do you go teaching
well, this is my first year doing level 3, and I'm pretty much feeding off Mr Dalton, but I'm using aspects from it, like the videos, I'm using those, the real life, giving putting the ownership back in the boys, and coming up with lesson content based on that. So I'm new to it, but it's all about trial and error, I think. Give it a go. If it doesn't work, then change it, but you've got to also cater for your kids as well. It's a big thing.
The other thing we do is Google Classroom. We have each other in each other's classroom. So anything that's posted through my classroom that Hamish gets access to, and vice versa. So we work really close in collaboration.
What about using student images? Do you just check in with the kids?
Yeah, well, I do that
Yeah.
anyway, but
Yeah.
On our enrolment form,
Yeah.
any image we have, we can use, but I wouldn't exploit
Yeah.
that. I always say
Yeah.
to the boys, are you comfortable
Yeah.
with? And like I said, they love it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And they track how many views their videos had.
Yeah.
So that last one we did, it's only been on there for a couple of weeks, but it's a competition between them as they see it. And the barriers and enablers are winning because these is probably a bit more humorous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How long does it normally take you to make a video? 7 minutes. How long would it take you in your own time?
Remember what I said, number one barrier is time. When I started, let's say 3 hours. But again, because I wasn't comfortable putting something up that wasn't quite polished, or at least a little bit polished, I probably took longer than I needed to. But that's from concept, what I want to do, finding the right content and putting together. As I've become better with iMovie and Camtasia, it's a lot quicker now. But the thing that takes the most time is, right, I want to create some content around this subject. Now, how am I going to make that look? Because you can't just dive in and try and, you've got to have a plan for it. And that's what takes the most time. The mechanics of putting it together now doesn't take me very long. But I suppose I used to just sort of just speak freely to the camera. Now I sort of kind of use scripts and sort of jump back and forth because I got sick of trying to record something, then making a mistake and re-recording.
Oh, I was just going to say, so after the 7-minute clip, do they then, do you have any reflection questions after, or is it only kept for when they come back? So do they do a task around it, and it's only till they come back the next day?
Yep. So with that flip mat, the idea is the idea is if they don't have their own style of taking notes, which to be honest not many of them do, I encourage them to do it that way. I'm just going to try and bring it back up. And I say above anything else, ask questions, because if I don't know where that content sits with each of them or with them as a group, then it makes it harder for where we go next. Yeah. So as I say, I don't move on from this until I have at least 5 questions. And I say to them, if you haven't got 5 questions amongst the group, you've understood the content perfectly, which is never the case.
Do you put your videos on Google Classroom? Is that what you're saying you're media for, or you just go to the YouTube channel?
YouTube. So what I do is I put them all on YouTube, and then I post on Facebook. So what we've got, I have another channel that I operate, trying to do some stuff around teacher support, so around Google stuff. And I haven't been brave enough to do this one yet, but in my head I want to do the video. Facebook is the best LMS that no one uses. Seriously, it is outstanding. So with my class, and this was 2 years ago, they said to me, when I used to use Edmodo, I don't know if anyone uses Edmodo, I'd post things like Edmodo, the boys would come to class the next day, oh, I didn't get that post. And they said to me, they articulated it really well, we have to leave Facebook to go to Edmodo, and they're just not interested. So they taught me, that whole idea of ako. If you create a group, so you don't have to be our friend, you create a group, we get into the group, it's a secret group, no one else can see our posts, and it just comes up like a text message on their phone. It's amazing. So, boys, new video, and I put the link to the YouTube channel straight into Facebook.
Could you then use that secret group on Facebook and then put a reflection or a thought or a question, or are you using, what are you using to gather the reflection on
Twitter doesn't work with my boys, they see that it's an old man's thing, so that makes me feel really bad.
So when you say you want 5 questions, is that when you see them face to face the next day, or when you're getting those questions? Because to make it fresh in your mind, that they can pose that question straight away.
Yeah, there's places I'd love to take this, and that would be one of those places. The boys do use that to post a question rarely or infrequently, and when someone does post a question, they're really responsible with their answers around it, and it is good, but overwhelmingly it is they bring their questions to class. But if they could do that, then that would just make things for the whole class and the planning so much better.
Watch the video and then you could possibly monitor it might be compulsory for one of them that they all have to leave a comment or something positive or whatever.
Yep.
That would be a good item.
And again, the realities of high school students, and especially our school, is quite often most of them will watch it in the morning as well. And I'm realistic. We've got boys that our first 15 train like the All Blacks, our senior A basketball train like the Tall Blacks. Then they go to their jobs. They are busy young men. And again, I see this as another avenue of a way that they're far more likely to watch my 7-minute video than they were ever to do my 30-minute homework task, whatever it might have been.
I just wanted to say also the 7 minutes is fantastic. It's already, I think, very strong attention. It is also like the fact that you think about modes of assessment, you go from the choice, and then the different types of modes that you've seen from the assessment also vary. So that's really exciting, just a written report, which is what we see locally.
What time are we supposed to finish? Any more questions?
Yeah, have you seen anybody do this teaching a second language?
No. The thing with the flipped classroom, I suppose, is I think there's more people doing it than you know about, because not everyone is comfortable putting things up online and sharing, I suppose. And within our school, it's. I mean, I never want to come across as preaching. I made that point today. So I haven't sort of done this kind of presentation to our staff, but I've had a number of people come to me and sort of ask about it, and how to implement it. And some people try little bits at a time. You don't have to fully flip. You might flip an aspect, you might flip a unit, and see how it goes for you and the students. Because make no bones about it. Flipping does take time, but the flip side of that is that your content is always there. And it doesn't matter if the boys lose their books. I mean, if you look at my boys' books now, there's actually hardly any writing in them anyway. The content's always there for them and for me. So now, on a yearly basis, a lot of my content's already there. I can tweak it, or I can create new content. So what I'm doing with the boys now, where I see this going now, is them creating content that interrelates these concepts together. Because we all know that whole concept of interrelating things together, that's so important. I've had teachers say to me, "Oh, that works really well for PE, but couldn't work for my subject." And I say, "Really? Why not?" Anything that's a skill, anything that needs to be learned, can be flipped. But you pick your battles.
That assessment that is sort of up there now.
Yep.
Where do you store that, waiting for moderation to come and having to submit maybe all of those for moderation?
Google Drive. I don't print anything out.
So you put into Google Classroom, so it's all in one place, and then
Google Drive.
They don't submit to Google Classroom.
No,
and
because Google Classroom is amazing, but it's still very limited in that you submit you give out an assessment, and it's that it's the written task.
No, but they can upload a file. They could upload that voice. They could upload.
They can.
Yeah, and turn it in.
It works just as well through Google Drive.
They just submit it there.
Yep.
And you gather them into a folder.
Yep.
Have you had problems with them doing stuff after it's been put into the drive?
Because you can monitor quite easily that, and I take copies of. Because before Google Classroom, that's what I had to do. I submitted something through Google Drive, I made a copy of it, set it in my own file. That way it just takes any of that issue out of it, which is essentially what Google Classroom does. It takes ownership from them, gives it to you, or you have it before you turn it back to them. So that's sort of how I get around that. But in our moderation folders now, and again, what we're trying to say to our teachers, which came to us from the principal's nominee seminar, if it's given to you electronically, do not print it out and give it to moderation. It just doesn't make sense. You're double handling it. It's given to you electronically, it's safe, store it there, and then share it electronically. Save a few trees.
Do your boys use a workbook or anything like that? Like those?
Oh, like a textbooky type thing?
Yeah, or sort of that NCA workbook.
Oh, no.
Any of those?
No.
So that form of notes is really what they take from your videos.
I hope I don't offend anyone when I say this. I've never been a fan of workbooks or textbooks. Yeah, it's just, I feel that it takes the learning creativity away from the students and sort of directs them where they need to go.
Do you still, what's your format for your sessions? Like, how do you split them? Do you have a theory session where you go and do that and you still do your practicals, or do you just run any format where you do the video and then it...
So, I don't have theory sessions anymore. Everything is a learning activity or a practical, whatever term you want to give it. But now, because I've created that extra time, so if I think of something like stages of learning, I might have devoted 2 lessons to stages of learning. I'm just speaking freely here. 3/4 of one lesson might have been a PowerPoint presentation, questions, all that jazz. Then there might have been a quick activity. The next lesson might have been a practical or another learning activity. Now, because I've got that video that's 7 minutes, I now have 2 lessons to which I can dig down. So I've created an extra hour and 10 minutes essentially from what I had previously. And I don't know how you guys find it, but for me, some things just took a lot of time to get through theory. Again, because of that disengagement. This isn't fun, this is it's like a writing type thing, so things take longer than they need to take.
So do you just say, is it red and white every session pretty much? And
No, well, sorry, yes, earlier in the year when we were doing 3.9, because we developed strategies for the W2K trail run, so it was sort of, so we did a lot of, Hamish and I did a lot of practical training. Now we're into, when we did the biomechanics of the golf swing, now we're into the PIP. We've got a golf range at school, so it's a novel skill, so it works quite well for that. But boys don't wear red and whites in the golf range in winter, so they're allowed to wear their uniform. So, but yeah, predominantly a lot of practical or a learning activity in the classroom that revolves around that. And quite often those activities link. So, you saw that activity of the visual representation of the schema. That one. That linked to that, creating that video of feedback for a cognitive, associative, autonomous learner and linking the idea of schema.
What's all the recording done on? Is it just an iPhone or?
For the boys?
Yeah.
Because our school's PC, but there's a couple of us that got a Macs. A lot of boys have iPhones. So they do the recordings on their phones and then they just airdrop it to me. If you're on iOS devices, airdrop is just amazing. It's just quickly, you just press the button and it goes straight across, like through, like, I don't even know how it works, like Bluetooth or something. It's just sharp. So they use their phones, and I also have 2 iPads in the classroom. One's mine and one's the school's that I use to give them out to do filming and things if need be.
Have you ever done it with juniors?
I haven't. Flipping the classroom?
Yeah.
No, well,
I've never done it with juniors.
yeah, no, and I've only been flipping the classroom for the last 2 years, and that's since in the time I've been DP, so I've only had the 1 class.
How often do you do the videos for them? Like how many times a week would you do?
Depends on the unit we're in. Depends how much content is there. So when we were doing biomechanics of golf, there's a lot more content to cover there than there was when we were doing strategies, for a physical event. So hard to put a number on it, but when we're in a content section of a unit, would be no more than 2 times a week.
And you see your students 4 times a week? Or?
5. We run a 5x5 timetable.
For like some approaches going student centered, like for example 3.5, and giving students the choice, do you still kind of stay with one approach, like we're doing sports violence, and you can structure videos, or have you thought about giving them more? Is there potential for that?
There is. In the past, we've tried, before flipping, we've tried the pick what you want. And for me, in our school, that freedom didn't work too well. So what we do is we co-construct the context with the students. We let them choose out of a group of them, then we go with that. To be fair, I did push them last year towards sports violence, because every year when I take scholarship boys, I always had to reteach content. So last year made life a lot easier. But they were interested. Sport violence is pretty, yeah, it's interesting for the boys. Eh? But the year before, when it was drugs and sport, they didn't choose that.
Have you had any interaction with your wider community about this, or what their thoughts are on it?
Like sharing beyond the classroom? Yeah, limited. So we just released our Learning with Digital Technologies action plan to our school, to our staff, just last week actually. And within that, related back to the e-learning planning framework, of which one of those is beyond the classroom. And again, this is my assessment, my stereotype. Secondary schools aren't very good at sharing beyond the classroom about learning, as opposed to primary schools and even intermediates. And we within the PE department, we sort of unpacked that a bit, and Scotty there, he talked about his daughter that's at one of the local primary schools, and how they can view her blog and class blog and all these wonderful things. Liam spoke about his wife as a primary school teacher at another school, and what wonderful things she has with her blog as well. And we have that challenge of students in multiple classes. They don't just have one homeroom, but it's still no excuse. So long-winded way of saying, we're talking about how we can do that. One of the things I've done is, in fact, just 2 weeks ago, I emailed all the parents in my class, gave them the link to those videos that their boys were involved in, and said, look at this wonderful thing your son's helped create, blah, 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 blah. By the way, biomechanics assessment due on Monday. So it's just a little plug there as well. And the feedback I got from the parents was overwhelmingly positive. They really enjoyed being able to see what the boys are doing, and said, it's good to see my son having fun. But yeah, that's something I've got to do better.
What sort of advice could you give to people who are going to look to start applying some of this to a classroom? What sort of first few steps would you have to take?
Ask questions. Get on Twitter. If you're not on Twitter, to me that is the #1 professional learning network I use. People on Twitter just share so freely. Ask questions. Do a bit of thinking about it, but you've just got to think of that dynamic. It can be, it's quite not unnerving, but when I first put a video out there, the dynamic of the classroom changed, and literally just that time, it's like, wow, I've got so much time now, what am I going to do with this? And you've got to think about it. If you don't think about it, you risk going into that, that area there, and it's just not much point.
That flipped mat you showed us.
Yep.
What format do the kids do that on? Is it on a Google document, or is it?
No, I wish I was better
individual
with
things, or what is it?
I wish I was better with Adobe or something. That's just a Word document, and I give them a printed copy at the start of the year, and I share it with them on Google Classroom. But the reality is, they just use their book just to.
They do that in their written books.
Yes, but they don't follow that format on their page. They just sort of have their sections.
Yeah.
And when I say they, not everyone does.
Mm.
But again, they can go back and check the content anytime they like.
Is it compulsory to text? That's a text one up there, isn't it?
Text the definition. I expect every student to watch the video and have a text the definition of.
To you?
Words. No. The idea just being that I just want them to think concisely about the definition.
Type it in there like a text.
Yeah, or handwrite it in, but or whatever it is. Yeah, but just make your thinking concise.
Mm.
And what I try to use is sort of say, imagine you had to explain that to your 8-year-old brother, because I want them to take all the jargon out, what does it mean, and do it really quick before you lose your attention span.
With your achievement, so last year when you were doing level 3 with written, and have you seen much shift into more merits excellence or just more general achievement?
Good question. Yes, but it could be coincidence. So last year had the best results we've ever had. We use 14 plus credits, so the UE standard is our measurement. 92% of the class got 14 plus credits, and I think from memory we had 4 excellence endorsements and 4 merit endorsements in that class, about 26. But I can't say, hey, that's a flipped classroom in action until I have more data to that effect. But again, last year we got 2 scholarships, and again, for some of your schools that may not seem like many, but they were the only 2 scholarships in our school. And for us, we're really proud of that. And I can't take all the credit. Liam taught one of the boys last year, and then we sort of applied the flipped theory into our tutorials. But yeah, it's the first time we've ever had two scholarships in PE at Voicethread.
Awesome, so say thank you for doing that. That was amazing. Thank you, guys. Good appreciation.
Thank you.
By the looks of everyone seemed really engaged throughout that, and I learnt lots. I think I had 1 lecture and 2 slides were on flipped classroom, so I've learnt lots, and I'm pretty enthusiastic to try it. I think it'll be quite hard starting out teaching when I go out next year and trying to first start this, but I think I'll definitely try to push myself and try to do some, even if it's just a lesson, and go from there. But yeah, thank you for telling us all about that.
That's my personal email address. Happy for you to, if you have any questions, to let me know, or through Twitter. You know, like I said earlier, I'm really happy to help, to offer advice, but I don't profess to be an expert. This is just my experience with it. Okay.